If someone calls you bird-brained, they're probably trying to say that you're a little slow. But considering all we've learned about how smart some birds really are, this may not be the read your bully thinks it is. Let's dive bomb straight into the brains of crows. Are they as smart as they say? Or do people just think they're deep because they're goth? Hey, I'm Tasha, and this is Animalogic, the show that unpacks the nature of nature. Today we're asking the question, are crows smarter than a fifth grader? You could go pretty much anywhere on Earth and you'd find crows. Their sleek black feathers make them stand out whenever they land, and their dashing wings cut a majestic figure when they're airborne. These icons sometimes represent death, the story behind naming a flock of crows a murder. But they're also associated with power, evolution, and trickery. Almost every mythology and culture in the world has some unique tale or origin story about crows. But why is that? Why do they fascinate us so much? Their main thing is their famous advanced thinking powers, but even that is selling them short. Did you know that crows are also incredible mimics? They've been trained to count up to 7, with the most verbose among them being able to say over 100 words and 50 full sentences. Without having heard it, what do you think they'd sound like? I think they'd sound like this. 1, 2, 3. Some pet crows can even mimic their owners' voices to mock the family dog and torment the livestock. Their rap for being tricksters is definitely earned. On the flip side, crows are also known for their soft side, bringing gifts of shiny objects and stones to humans that feed them and treat them kindly. Crows and their corvid brethren are some of the smartest non-primate creatures on planet Earth, at least in the way the primates are smart. Depending on the study, their intelligence has been compared to that of a smart gorilla, a dumb Neanderthal, or an average 7-year-old kid. Crows have been the focus of studies on bird intelligence because of their remarkable natural abilities, like fashioning tools to get a tasty snack, leading us humans to personify them. That's because we humans love to use ourselves as the bar, leaving us to wonder, how smart are crows compared to us? But before we can truly determine what groups of creatures, or humans for that matter, are the best analog for crows, we need to talk about intelligence in general, at least as we classify it from our human perspective. We have to keep in mind that human intelligence evolved to help us with our own specific needs in our unique environments. Other species have their own challenges to overcome, so intelligence from species to species won't always mean the same thing. Flighted birds, for example, navigate life in the air, where every direction, up, down, side to side, has potential for movement. Without assistance, humans are bound to a single plane, moving back and forth, side to side. Imagine how that must impact a bird's spatial perception, and therefore, their brain development. Having said all of that, if we're going to figure out who's smarter, a 7-year-old human or a crow, we need to measure their smarts with our own yardsticks. But even the question of what it means to be smart is a huge mystery. There's a lot of debate, but no consensus. We, the very humans who are comparing ourselves to other animals, can't agree what intelligence actually is. What we can agree on pretty universally is that human intelligence is a psychological construct, a concept we've put together to explain something we can't observe. One generally accepted definition of intelligence is the ability to reason, plan, solve problems, think abstractly, comprehend complex ideas, learn quickly, and learn from experience. So let's see how the crows fit into that. Let's start at the beginning and ask the question, can crows reason? A 2012 study on New Caledonian crows set out to answer just that. Let me take a moment here to talk for a second about New Caledonian crows, since we'll be hearing a lot about them in this episode. They're considered among the most intelligent of all the crows, and are therefore studied more deeply than other species of corvids. They're the nerdiest member of the nerdiest bird family, and of course, they perform really well on standardized tests. In this study, the researchers wanted to know if crows can figure out cause and effect if the cause is hidden, which would show reasoning, an ability that was thought to be uniquely human. In other words, if they started watching a movie halfway through, could they figure out how it started? The study gives the example of seeing leaves moving erratically in a thick canopy. We can deduce that there must be something heavy moving around in the tree and shaking the branches. But this understanding of the hidden cause of an action isn't a given for other species. In the experiment, 8 crows watched 2 series of events. In the first, a human entered a hide next to a crow feeder. Then a remote-controlled stick was waved around the feeder, and finally, the human exited the hide. In the second, the stick was moved without the human entering or exiting. The stick was set up very close to the feeder, so the crows could see that they might be hit by the stick if they were to go for a snack. In the case when they saw the human enter and exit, they approached the box less cautiously. When it was unclear who or what moved the stick, and if it might move on its own again, the crows proceeded with caution. This shows some pretty advanced reasoning on the crow's part. Good work, guys. Next up on our checklist of human intelligence, we have plan, which requires a key mark of intelligence: imagination. Most animals are not able to map out their next few moves into the future. But studies have shown that crows are planners, just like us. One study published in 2019 by researchers at the University of Auckland in New Zealand showed that New Caledonian crows are able to plan several steps ahead to get what they want, a bit like a chess player thinking through future moves. In the experiment, the crows were given a multi-step puzzle that required them to use tools in a specific sequence to reach a food reward. Crucially, the different parts of the puzzle were hidden from each other, meaning the birds couldn't simply react to what they were seeing in the moment. Instead, they had to remember where different tools were and mentally plan how each step would help them solve the next one. The setup also included red herring tools that looked useful but wouldn't actually help solve the problem, to test if the crows could ignore bad options and stick to a plan. Many of the crows successfully solved the entire sequence on their first try, suggesting they weren't just learning through trial and error, but were actually mapping out the steps in advance. Yep, sometimes I walk into a room and I forget why I'm there. And while I'm doing that, the crow outside my window is already planning its next heist. But planning isn't everything. Sometimes you need to think on your feet. That's where the unique ability of New Caledonian crows and their ability to solve problems without a plan steps up. Another study set out to understand if crows solve problems with insight, visualizing different outcomes, or through a feedback loop of trying something and seeing if what they're doing is working. In this case, the crows were tasked with pulling a string horizontally to get a treat. Since the string had slack, pulling on it didn't immediately move the treat closer, so the birds didn't have that instant visual feedback with each pull. Almost none of the crows completed this task successfully, showing that they rely on visual confirmation to problem solve. To the credit of the crows, chimpanzees also didn't perform well with a similar experiment. Speaking of primates, we know through studies over the last 30 years that crows actually have cognitive abilities on par with our cousins. That's because their brains have similar characteristics to primates, despite having a completely different brain architecture. Bird brains lack a cortex, the outermost layer of the brain and the part that looks all lumpy and bumpy. In your brain, the cortex is responsible for a lot, including thinking, memory, language, consciousness, and integrating complex information from all across your brain. Primate neurons are arranged in layers, while crow brains are organized in nuclear clusters. Because of these clusters, crows actually have even more neurons than primates and show similar abilities. And that's all without having a cortex, which was long believed to be the pinnacle of cognition. Okay, let's go back to our list of qualities of human intelligence. We now need to find out if crows can think abstractly. If you had asked Descartes or John Locke, they would have said, "You're bonkers." According to them, abstract thinking is uniquely human. One study looked at whether crows can do something like analogical reasoning, which means understanding not just the thing they see, but also the relationships between them. In the experiment, 2 crows were first trained to match objects by simple features like color and shape. Then they were tested on relational matching, choosing pairs that had the same kind of relationship as a sample pair, even though none of the items looked exactly the same. The crows succeeded at this task, showing they could go beyond surface features and respond to abstract similarities in relationships, something researchers had mostly seen in primates before. Pretty smart. Okay, but what about comprehending complex ideas? Crows, for example, are masters of object permanence, which is the understanding that objects still exist even when they aren't visible. It takes human infants at least half a year to start developing this understanding. That's why peekaboo is so delightful for babies. When you put your hands in front of your face, they genuinely believe you've disappeared. What a surprise when you magically rematerialize in front of their very eyes. In other comprehension of complex ideas, one study set out to discover if crows could be trained to translate perceived numerosity into number of actions. As expected, the crows had absolutely no issue blasting through this task. Since we're already talking about crows outperforming human children, it's worth mentioning that crows are capable of recursion, the ability to identify one idea within another. Like, the man the lady talked to ran. The crows performed at the same level as 3 to 4-year-old kids. We actually got a chance to speak with one of the researchers who did this study to tell us about her work and her experience with some of the smartest animals on Earth.
My name is Danielle. I'm a postdoctoral researcher studying crow cognition and communication at the University of Tübingen.
Since we can't just ask crows to tell us how smart they are, one of the key things researchers have to do is design ways to test their abilities.
It's very difficult kind of in designing these studies, right? Because we can't ask them exactly what are you thinking or what can you do? And so we kind of think about, what are the things we want to test potentially? And how do we design a project that gets at this? So one of my studies was teaching crows how to kind of count out loud, like could they control the number of vocalizations that they made? And initially, they just had to learn like how to associate like a cue with making that number of vocalizations. And it's not like I could tell them, I want you to do this. They had to figure it out themselves. And one of the mistakes I made early on was the fact that, they were really good at this task because they just saw a cue, made the number of vocalizations. And then I realized they were actually kind of cheating a little bit. They were just vocalizing until they got a reward. And so then we had to redesign the experiment so that they had to peck at the screen to report that they were done vocalizing. And this allowed us to be like, they can control the number of vocalizations and then report, this is what I've done before. So really kind of careful experimental design is what I would say is really helpful.
Yep, the crows were outsmarting literal scientists by finding ways of getting treats as easily as possible. They are smart. We'll get back to Dr. Liao in a bit. Okay, moving on to our last test for human intelligence. Can crows learn from experience? If you've ever pissed off a crow, you'll know this to be true. Crows will hold decades-long grudges if you mess with them. American crows are known to recognize human faces, especially those faces that have crossed them in the past. If that wasn't bad enough, in the same way that crow parents pass down skills like tool use to their fledglings, they'll also pass down their beefs. Take off a crow and they'll tell all their family and friends, who will join in the scolding of the perp if they dare show their face again. So they're smart, petty, and gossipy. That's a dangerous combination. But it's not all eternal grudges for crows. We know from observing them that making and using tools actually puts them in a good mood. One study showed that crows are actually intrinsically motivated to use tools. This means doing something just because it's enjoyable or satisfying. So using tools might not just be about food they get, they might actually be having a really good time.
And the New Caledonian crows, we think that they're special because they live on an isolated island with no woodpeckers, which is why they might have developed this tool use for foraging. Exactly, so there would be competition for that food source. Yeah, so as far as I know, this is not my area of research, but I think it's really interesting. It would be the New Caledonian crow and also the alala, which would be the Hawaiian crow, that seem to be using tools. And those are all islands with no woodpeckers.
If you've ever seen a woodpecker fighting a crow, now you know why. So what's next in crow intelligence research?
So this is one of the things I'm interested in is like how good are they at learning? And I think one of the reasons we see corvids like all around the world, I think they're not on like every continent except for Antarctica, is that they're like ridiculously adaptable and good at learning new things. So I think this is partially where like in the lab, we train them to do different tasks to kind of expose like what cognitive abilities they have.
Thank you, Dr. Liao. If you want to keep up with her work, click on the link in the description. Reasoning, planning, problem solving, abstract thinking, comprehending complex ideas, learning quickly and from experience. It seems that by every metric, crows fit the bill for human levels of intelligence. Now, who do we call to have the term bird brain stricken from our vocabulary?
When you think of penguins, you probably think of this. But did you know there's penguins that thrive in tropical climates? What helps them survive in these environments so different from those of some of their closest relatives? we sent our South American correspondent to investigate and report on these tropical penguins and answer some of the most pressing questions, like how do they survive the heat? And why aren't there any penguins in North America?
I'm in the Magellan Strait and we're going to Magdalena Island. That's home to like one of the biggest penguin colonies around here, so we're hoping to see a bunch of penguins.
These are the tropical penguins. Penguins are the most iconic animals of Antarctica, and they're known worldwide for surviving the toughest winters on Earth and raising chicks in the middle of the Antarctic ice sheets. These are emperor penguins. They're the largest penguins in the world. After the female lays the egg, she goes to the ocean to feed, and the male incubates the egg for 2 months, during which he doesn't eat at all. The chick is born in the middle of winter, when temperatures get to minus 60 degrees Celsius, and blizzards bring winds of up to 200 kilometers an hour. Then the female returns with a belly full of fish and feeds the chick, while the male goes into the water to eat for the first time in over 8 weeks. This is an amazing story of adaptation and survival in some of the toughest environments on Earth. But it's also so powerful that in some ways it has limited our vision of what a penguin can be. There are 18 penguin species, and some of them have adapted to life in milder weather across the southern hemisphere. South Africa and Namibia are home to the adorable African penguins. These little guys are often seen in tourist beaches and have a donkey-like call, which has earned them the nickname the jackass penguin. New Zealand has 3 species in its 2 main islands. One of them, the little penguin, also nests in Australia. We had the chance to see them a few years ago. Check out our episode about them here. But the penguins more comfortable with tropical weather are the South American penguins, so we're going to focus on them in this episode. Our South American correspondent, Andreas, went to Patagonia to check out the most abundant species in the continent, the Magellanic penguin. These penguins are found mostly on the Atlantic coast of South America, and as their name suggests, the Strait of Magellan.
I'm in the Magellan Strait and we're going to Magdalena Island, which is about an hour away from Punta Arenas. That's home to like one of the biggest penguin colonies around here, so we're hoping to see a bunch of penguins, say hi. You can get pretty close, obviously no touching. It's gonna be fun.
Magdalena Island is considered a natural monument due to the huge amount of penguins that nest there. Over 100,000 penguins can cram themselves into this little island during the peak season. That's almost 5% of the global population. But after that, you can tell these penguins apart by the 2 black bands across their chests. Very dapper. Magellanic penguins lay their eggs in burrows, usually 2 at a time. But once they're done with their baby duties, they go far and wide in search of food. Sometimes they make it all the way to Brazil, a country you might not associate with penguins at all. But it's this strange mix of tropical life and Antarctic life that gives us stories like that of Dean Dean, the Magellanic penguin, a little bird who won the hearts of Brazilians across the world. It happened in a small town near Rio. João, a local retiree, was out fishing when he stumbled upon an injured penguin covered in oil. He took Dean Dean home, cleaned it up, and fed it until it was healthy enough to go back to the ocean. Heartwarming. But the story doesn't end there. The following year, Dean Dean returned to Joao's backyard, where he stayed for a while before returning to his penguin family. Joao thought that was a one-off visit, but the penguin kept returning every year, greeting Joao as if it was a part of his family. Which, in a way, it was true, because by then, Dean Dean and Joao were bonded forever. Aww. Of course, Dean Dean wasn't originally looking for friends. He, like all other Magellanic penguins, goes to Brazil every year for the most important thing in the world, futebol. Oh no, I'm kidding. It's delicious, nutritious seafood. The Malvinas Current pushes cold, nutrient-rich water along the Argentinian coast. At the same time, the Brazil Current brings warm water south along the Brazilian coast. These two currents meet in northern Argentina, Uruguay, and southern Brazil, pushing the nutrients closer to the surface and making it a super productive fishing area for penguins. Then, during the summer, they head back down to Patagonia to mate. But okay, even though these penguins make it fairly north, they're mostly in the cold waters of Patagonia and the Falkland Islands. So let's meet the penguins that live permanently in warmer regions. First of all, the Humboldt penguin. Andreas is actually out in search of these little trappy penguins. So let's check in on him and see if he's found any.
I'm about 2 hours north of Santiago and I'm looking for the warm weather penguin. It's about 25 degrees, which is a little warmer than we expect a penguin to live in, right? But that island right there is Penguin Island. At some times of the year, there'll be thousands of them at the same time. So hopefully there's still some of them.
That's right. But the reason we're here is that this is one of the best places to see Humboldt penguins in the world.
Everything around here is called Los Pingüinos, which means the penguins, obviously. And there's guys all over the place. Every other street is called something penguin. That's because that's Penguin Island right there. On a good day, you can see thousands of penguins there. But today, at the end of the season, you might only see a couple. But that's still good. I see some Humboldt penguins.
The penguins are the main tourist attraction, which has led to environmental protections. The penguins are iconic. Humboldt penguins, just like their Magellanic cousins, depend on cool, nutrient-rich currents to bring them food. This is the Humboldt Current, which travels north along Chile and Peru. The water here is so full of nutrients that penguins have adapted to live here year-round. During the summer, they mate, raise their young, and then molt their feathers in huge groups before dispersing to fish along the massive coasts of Peru and Chile. So, did we make it on time?
And we got our penguins. You see that little thing over there? Obviously not in this shot, but once they're here, you'll see a few of them. Be very happy. Clap for them.
Surviving the heat in these places requires special adaptations to keep their cool. One of them is to spread their flippers and stand very still to radiate heat. They stand so still that they often look like they've been frozen in time.
They're not moving at all, which kind of worries me that they might be statues. Will they put statues in that island? Oh, no, never mind. No, it moved. I'm sorry. I'm just paranoid about this thing.
Besides cooling by radiating heat, Humboldt penguins have patches of skin around their beaks, cheeks, and eyes. When they're overheating, these patches fill up with blood and release heat through exposed areas of skin. They're basically the penguin version of elephant ears. This is crucial because Humboldt penguins live in some areas that are straight-up deserts. Their range includes the coastal areas of the Atacama Desert, the driest place on Earth.
The weather here is basically the same as New England. It's hot in the summer, it's cold in the winter, but a little more temperate, I guess, in the winter. But still, like, it's interesting to think that even here we have thousands of penguins, and they're telling me that if I want to see more penguins, I have to go more north, which in the southern hemisphere means warmer areas.
This environment creates one of the weirdest mishmashes of wildlife in the world. Have you ever seen a penguin and a cactus in the same shot? Me neither. But here they are, along with other typical hot weather shorebirds, like pelicans and cormorants. And yet, even though they look nothing like other birds, penguins are the hardest ones to see.
Sometimes it's really hard to see the penguins because their bellies is the same color of that white thing over there. And that white thing over there is their poop. Somehow they evolved to poo the same color as the color of their bellies, or the other way around. In any case, when they're standing and they're showing their white bellies and they're standing on the white surface over there, you can't really see them at all. Isn't that wild?
Their coloration has the dual purpose of hiding in the water, but also on land. Their predators include sea lions, sharks, foxes, dogs, and even other birds like skuas. Having seen the adorable penguins, it's time to let them be.
Okay, the tide's getting high and the penguins seem to be going to sleep, so it's time for me to go. But it was really awesome to get to see all these little guys. You know, they didn't do much. They're not here for my entertainment. They're here to be amazing penguins. But they are, so I'm glad I saw them. Let's look at them. And back to you, Danielle.
Thanks, Andreas. Unfortunately, we couldn't go visit the last and northernmost penguin species in the world, because it doesn't live along the South American coast. This is the Galapagos penguin, a species so tropical that's even found in the northern hemisphere. The Galapagos penguin is the only species whose entire population lives in the tropics. They're found mostly on Fernandina Island in the Galapagos. The north side of the island is north of the equator, which makes them the only wild species this side of the equator. To survive, they rely on the same cold water current that Humboldt penguins need to fish. They also pant like dogs and radiate heat like their Chilean cousins by standing still and spreading their flippers, and stay in rocky caves during the hottest times of the day. It would have been amazing to hear what Darwin would have to say about this penguin, but it seems like he never encountered them on his trip to the Galapagos. What do you think he'd say? Let me know in the comments. So, okay, we have all these penguins living in hot climates. What makes them different from the Antarctic penguins we know and love? There are three main reasons why these three penguin species can survive in such warm conditions. The first one is that they're all very small compared to Antarctic penguins. Emperor penguins can be up to 1.3 meters tall and weigh over 40 kilograms. The Galapagos penguin is about a third as tall, but 10 times lighter than an emperor penguin. Being smaller makes it easier to get rid of excess heat. The second one is that even though they live in sunny areas with tropical climates, the water they swim in is very cold. Both the Humboldt and Brazil currents bring cold water north from the Antarctic, so the penguins swim in it when overheating. These waters are also richer in food than warmer areas like the Caribbean. And lastly, they have adapted to get rid of heat through physical adaptations, like panting or bare patches of skin. If they can do all of these things, it seems like there shouldn't be a barrier for them to take over the coasts. Well, for starters, the delicious meals pretty much stop at northern Peru. The Humboldt Current moves away from the coast pretty much when it reaches the Peruvian border with Ecuador. It happens to go through the Galapagos Islands, which is why we have penguins there. But the coastal waters north of Peru are not nutrient-rich enough to support large penguin populations. Also, penguins are great swimmers, amazing parents, resourceful hunters, but one thing they're not is great fighters. The Patagonian and coastal areas of Peru, Chile, and Argentina have some predators. But as we get closer to the tropics, the predation pressures get much stronger. Can you imagine a penguin trying to build a nest in a place full of jaguars, cougars, jaguarundis, ocelots, bush dogs, caimans, crocodiles, and harpy eagles? Yeah, these penguins wouldn't stand a chance. So it's impossible to establish themselves north of these areas. Okay, we've established that they can't make it to Canada on their own, unfortunately. But what would happen if they were brought over by humans? I'm not saying we should do it. We should not do it at all. But just hypothetically, could they use their adaptations to survive up here? Unfortunately, probably not. There are some areas, like the coasts of California and Oregon, with cool, nutrient-rich water. But nesting would be a problem. These areas have a much higher human population than the South American coasts. And humans bring cats, dogs, and rats with them, which would decimate penguin populations. The Humboldt and Magellanic penguins nest in burrows. These would be hard to replicate in the rocky shores of eastern Canada or the temperate rainforests of British Columbia. Even if you picked the most adaptable of these species, the Humboldt penguin, and put it in the theoretically best North American habitats, which would probably be California, they wouldn't make it. Human activity, North American predators and diseases, and environmental fluctuations due to climate change would all make it impossible to manage. The only way it could happen is if there were serious existential threats to penguin populations in Chile. But as of right now, managing that is not the case. So yeah, It's better to leave penguins where they belong, in their natural habitats. As fun as it would be, North American penguins are not meant to be. Their populations are actually decreasing in South America. Dealing with their problems in the South should be our first priority. Oil pollution, overfishing, climate events like El Niño, and predation by introduced predators like dogs, cats, and rats have led to declining populations of the 3 species. The Humboldt penguin is a vulnerable species with only about 24,000 mature penguins left in the world. The Galapagos penguin is in an even more dire situation. They're endangered with only 2,000 adults left in the wild. For the sake of all penguin lovers in the world, I hope their efforts succeed. I can't wait to see another penguin parade, but I'll gladly go to them and support their conservation efforts. Emus versus humans. Who would win that fight? This is a question we no longer have to ask, because we know the answer. In 1932, 20,000 emus took on the Australian military. The result bathed these birds in eternal glory. This is the Emu War. The Emu War of 1932 is one of the most glorious moments in avian military history. A ragtag crew of tens of thousands of flightless birds took on Australian World War I veterans and waged a war of attrition that concluded in human retreat. But how did it get to that? Let's start with the antebellum period. Emus and their ancestors have inhabited Australia for millions of years. They live across the country, but in Western Australia, they congregate in large groups that migrate from the outback to the coast for the breeding season. Emus are one of the largest birds in the world. They can be close to 2 meters tall and weigh up to 70 kilograms. They're the 3rd tallest avian species after the 2 African ostrich species. They're also the 5th heaviest bird, after the ostriches and the northern and southern cassowaries, also from Australia. On the human side, Western Australia has been populated for tens of thousands of years. But during the early 20th century, the population exploded following the construction of railways that connected it to the rest of Australia. Population went from 40,000 in 1890 to 400,000 in 1930. Wheat farming was a key part in this population and economic boom, with most of it being exported. But after the Great Depression of 1929, the markets collapsed. People stopped buying their wheat, and farmers started to really suffer financially. At the same time, a drought caused a larger than usual emu migration, and the wheat fields were right on their path. You might have seen signs that tell you not to feed wild birds because it disrupts their migration patterns. This is exactly what happened in Western Australia. Once the emus found all of this delicious wheat and water reservoirs, there was no reason for them to keep moving.
Hey everyone, we have exciting news! We're thrilled to announce the release of Animalogic's very first book, Strange Creatures. This book dives into the most incredible animals we've ever featured on the show, with each chapter packed with my illustrations and stunning full-color images. It's a fun and engaging way to learn about the animal kingdom, and a perfect tool to spark kids' interest in science. Each chapter breaks down an animal's biology, behavior, and all the coolest facts you need to know about these fascinating creatures. Animalogic's Strange Creatures is a must-have addition to your own library, or the perfect gift for an animal lover this upcoming holiday season.
Click the link in the description to check it out, and if you can, order a copy. It would mean the world. Thank you so much, and I hope that you love the book. The emus started going into the farms and eating to their heart's content. But they have pretty huge hearts, and the 20,000 of them quickly started destroying farms. Emus never skip leg day, and it was easy for them to knock down fences. This caused the additional damage of letting rabbits and other animals into the farms, which quickly turned them into dust. Many of the farmers were World War I veterans who'd been given farmland after the war. They were enduring great financial hardship due to the global recession that had tanked wheat exports, while the government had failed to provide subsidies. They needed to get rid of the emus as soon as possible. And since they had fought in the trenches, they thought they knew the best way to get rid of their adversaries. Machine guns. They helped defeat the great German and Austrian armies, so there's no way they wouldn't defeat their oversized bin chickens. Right? Right? The farmers petitioned the federal government to help them. They asked the government to send machine gun specialists to deal with the rascally emus. The plan was that the farmers would pay for the food, bullets, and accommodation, while the state government of Western Australia would pay for the transportation of soldiers and equipment. From the federal government's point of view, this was basically a free operation that could serve as target practice for the soldiers. And so, the soldiers prepared for battle and went on their merry way all the way to the wheat fields of Western Australia. What they didn't know was that the emus were already prepared. They had been prepared for thousands of years. Emus emerged at a time when Australia was packed with carnivores, like the 7-meter-long Megalania, the jaguar-sized Thylacoleo, also known as the marsupial lion, Quincana, a croc with the gait and speed of a Komodo dragon, and the Wonambi, a constrictor snake bigger than the largest living anacondas. And not only did the emus survive among these natural-born killers, they outlived them. So the emus had a very simple and effective strategy. In the words of the great poet, oversimplified, the emus said, "When they approach us, we run away." But still, none of these predators had machine guns, as far as we know. What kind of challenge would a couple of primates with boomsticks mount? The first battle took place in early November 1932. The soldiers approached a group of about 50 emus, and once they were within firing range, they unleashed their World War I Lewis guns. The emus did what they've been doing for thousands of years, and at the first shot, they scrammed and scattered in all directions. To defend themselves from these killers, emus developed powerful legs for kicking their opponents, but also to sprint away from danger. Emus can run at speeds of up to 50 kilometers an hour, fast enough to cover 3 football fields in 20 seconds. They also have a thick plumage to protect them and conceal their most sensitive areas. Within seconds, they were all out of the machine gun's range. Only a few emus were felled, while the army wasted hundreds of bullets. Round 1, advantage, birds. For the next couple of weeks, the soldiers kept the same strategy, but the emus kept thwarting their attempts due to their speed, agility, their ability to escape into rugged terrain, and an outstanding resilience to bullets. Emus are naturally skittish and run away at the first sight of danger. Their height and great vision helps them spot danger from large distances, and their travel groups keep eyes on all directions, scanning for danger. On one occasion, the soldiers tracked a group of 1,000 emus. But once they opened fire, the emus did what they always do and left the soldiers in the dust. Just about 25 emus were killed that day. The Emu Central Command reacted to this attack by canceling all large congregations. The soldiers would have to pick off hundreds of smaller groups. The emus officially entered the age of guerrilla warfare. Just like in other guerrilla wars, the emus were outgunned, but they had terrain and chaos on their side. They endured attacks from machine guns strapped to trucks, which couldn't drive as fast as the emus could run on uneven ground and made aiming almost impossible. There was even a report of an emu who got run over by the truck, but its body got stuck in one of the front wheels, making the truck lose control and crash into a tree. They literally had kamikaze attacks. After a brief interruption due to pressures from the media and the general public, the war continued until the government put a final stop to it. By then, the soldiers had used close to 10,000 bullets and killed under 1,000 emus. The operation was too expensive and was considered too inhumane a way to control emu populations. The issue had reached such farcical levels in Australian politics that a member of parliament mockingly pondered if the soldiers involved in the emu war should be given a medal, to which another member responded that if anything, the medal should go to the emus. That was the final military involvement in the farmers' conflict with the emus, but not the end of the war on the bird. In the following years, a bounty system proved more effective than machine guns. This was just another of the many conflicts where humans settle in an animal's habitat and then get mad when the wildlife is still around and tries to use the available resources to survive. And just like that, with emu egg on their face, the military ended their operations. In this case, better fencing and population management led to a relatively happy ending. Emus are still abundant, and Australians, legend has it, are also still kicking.
These ferocious killers were the size of bears with eagle-like beaks and knives for feet. Their deadliness remains unmatched by modern predators. Their rule was long and brutal, and then they swiftly disappeared forever. These birds ruled over the age of terror. These are the terror birds. For millions of years in the Miocene, South America was a strange and dangerous place. It was a time when the continent was isolated and weird animals evolved to fill the ecological niches that dinosaurs used to occupy. The top predator placental mammals that rule today, like big cats and dogs, hadn't arrived yet. The land was dominated by carnivorous marsupials like the Thylacosmilus, crocodilian reptiles like the Purosaurus, one weird carnivorous armadillo, and, of course, predatory birds. But we're not talking about eagles, hawks, or condors. This land was ruled by terrestrial birds, some of which were over 2 meters tall and had the biggest bird heads ever recorded. It's hard not to get a big head when you're the largest terror bird, but Kelenken took it to the extreme. Just for context, the shoebill stork has one of the biggest heads among living birds. Their beak is about 25 centimeters long, with sharp edges and a pointy tip. You do not want to have any part of you caught in its jaws. But the shoebill's beak, plus their entire body, which can be as tall as me, only adds up to about 7 kilos in weight. The Kelenken's head alone was heavier than a whole shoebill. Their skull was 3 times longer than a shoebill's, and their total body weight was 40 times more than a shoebill, measuring roughly 250 kilograms. Yes, these birds were as heavy as grizzly bears, except unlike bears, they hunted on 2 legs, so they were in many ways more similar to a theropod dinosaur like Velociraptor than to any living predator. Kelenken was about 3 meters long from head to tail and roughly 2 meters tall. A single peck could probably split your head open, but we're not entirely sure if that's how they got their food. The most common theories are that they killed their prey by pecking it to death or by grabbing them and shaking to snap their neck. It's also possible that Kelenken was a kleptoparasitic scavenger and mostly stole other predators' prey. That means these birds not only terrorized delicious prey animals, but also other ferocious predators as well. Nobody was safe from terror birds. Their fossils have been found in formations in Patagonia alongside extinct rodents like guillemots and sparacidonts, who are marsupial-like predators. They might have been both eaten by the calancan and caught prey that the bird would later steal. Ground sloth babies were another likely prey of the terror bird. Yep, that's the saddest sentence I've ever said.
Calancan was far from the only terror bird. One species was so successful that it was one of the few predators to colonize North America during the Great American Interchange.
This was Titanus, a badass name for a badass predator who lived from about 5 to 2 million years ago. It was slightly shorter than calancan and much leaner. It weighed roughly 150 kilograms, about the same as a jaguar or a small black bear. But as we know from those modern animals, that's plenty of weight to be a fearsome predator.
So far, fossils of Titanus have only been found in Florida and Texas, and there's a huge geographical gap between them and their closest relatives in South America.
That means that there were likely other terror bird species that exploited the rainforest habitats of Central America. We just haven't found them yet.
That might be an interesting project if you're an emerging paleontologist. We just ask that if you find a new species, you name it Animalogico.
Terror birds emerged shortly after the extinction of their ancestors, the dinosaurs, around 62 million years ago, and were at the top of the food chain for almost 60 million years.
Siloteris, the youngest recorded species, lived until sometime between 80 and 6,000 years ago.
Humans entered South America about 14,000 years ago. So if you're of South American descent, there's a decent chance your ancestors went head-to-head with a terror bird. I don't envy them. These birds could kill you before you even knew they were there.
Terror birds were not only huge, they were also fast. Some species, such as Mesembryornis milnedwardzi and Patagornis marshai, could run upwards of 70 kilometers per hour. That's as fast as an ostrich.
The difference is that ostriches evolved to run away from cheetahs, lions, and wild dogs, whereas terror birds could have hunted those big animals themselves.
CT scans of terror bird skulls show that they were not likely to be huge biters.
Their musculature wasn't meant to crush bone the way hyenas and crocodiles' jaws do.
To take on larger prey, they probably used a combination of kicking, pecking, and possibly grabbing their prey with their massive beak and slamming it onto the ground.
This is similar to how modern predatory birds, like secretary birds and roadrunners, kill their prey. Their feet were equipped with large claws that could tear open flesh, and were longer than the famously lethal cassowary's claws. Though even without the claws, the sheer force of their kicks would have been enough to at least stun their prey.
After that, depending on the prey, they would swallow it whole or shred it apart and eat the best pieces.
Unfortunately, the changes in climate and the arrival of placental mammals like wolves and big cats were the doom of terror birds. Every empire crumbles eventually, and in this case, it was these furry animals that came to take the crown.
But there's still a living relative of terror birds hiding in South America, biding its time, waiting for the right chance to make a power move. We have secured some footage, but viewer discretion is advised. This is the closest living relative of the calancan, the Seriema. Okay, they're not as terrifying as their extinct cousins, but they do exhibit a lot of behaviors that are associated with terror birds.
I'd love to talk more about them, but they deserve their own episode.
We're still finding amazing fossils in South America. There are over 20 known species of terror birds and plenty more to be discovered. Stay tuned as we keep learning from these amazing beasts, although let's hope they don't come back to reclaim their crown.
Gorgeous, majestic, powerful, and absolutely terrifying. If you're an animal trying to survive in the rainforest, you better steer clear of this royal raptor. This is the killer witch of the jungle, the Harpy eagle.
The Harpy eagle is a fierce raptor in the genus Harpyle. It's so unique, it's the only species in this genus.
The crested eagle and the Papuan eagle are its closest relatives, but they don't have quite the same pizzazz or power as the harpy. The Harpy eagle can be found in Central and South America, from Mexico to Argentina, but its range is fragmented, and harpies are very rare, even in Brazil, where they're most common. The Harpy eagle likes to live in the upper canopy layers of tropical jungles, but when it's time to hunt, it will travel to open plains and less dense forests.
The Harpy eagle is an important symbol in many Latin American cultures. For example, it's the national bird in Panama, and in Brazil, many indigenous cultures believe the Harpy eagle to be a personification of former chiefs. Needless to say, the Harpy eagle demands our admiration and respect.
The bird got its English name from the ancient Greek harpy. This mythological creature was the personification of storm winds and was described as a hideous half-human, half-bird with long claws perfected for snatching away evildoers. The eagle version of the harpy is hardly hideous, but it is huge. In fact, it's one of the largest eagles in the world.
And the long snatching claws thing is bang on too. The Harpy eagle's talons can be up to 10 centimeters long, the largest of any eagle species. It's actually about the size of a grizzly bear's claw. So who do you think would win in a showdown? Maybe that's a question for another episode.
But what we do know is that harpies wouldn't compete in the heavyweight division. They weigh a modest 6 to 9 kilograms. But despite their nimbleness, they can stand up to more than a meter tall, about the height of a preschooler. Like most raptors, females are bigger than the males. The eagle's wingspan can reach up to 2.3 meters, and its legs are the size of human arms.
You can tell these guys apart from other birds at a distance. Their gray heads, white undersides, and black back and wings are iconic.
But the eagle's trademark feature is its crown of long feathers. A harpy can manually raise the feathery crown when it feels threatened.
So maybe head in the other direction if that happens. Their crown is the reason Brazilians refer to the Harpy eagle as Gavião Real, or Royal Hawk.
The crown gives the eagle a rather majestic, powerful appearance, which is probably why the Harry Potter filmmakers used it as inspiration for Fawkes, Dumbledore's pet phoenix.
Unfortunately, unlike Fawkes, the Harpy eagle isn't immortal. In the wild, it can only live up to about 30 years. Also, unlike Fawkes, it can't light itself on fire. Well, as far as we know.
It's not just the eagle's size and terrifying talons that make this raptor a force to be reckoned with. There's also its eyesight, which is 8 times more powerful than a human's. Harpy eagles can spot a mouse from over 200 meters away.
They've also got a great sense of hearing, which makes up for their embarrassing sense of smell.
Although harpy eagles can communicate with each other through whistles, clicks, and croaks, they try their best to hunt in total, terrifying silence. When flying, these birds can reach up to 80 kilometers per hour, but only in short spurts. Their real talent is sharply steering around trees, with help from their long tail feathers.
All of this adds up to a skilled hunter at the very top of the rainforest food chain, an apex predator.
The harpy eagle has a couple different approaches to hunting. She may remain perched in the same place for up to a day, patiently waiting for prey to show its face. Other times, she'll jump from branch to branch, using her sharp eyesight to scour the jungle for food.
When a delicious victim finally shows up, the eagle attacks in a lightning-fast motion.
Their long, sharp talons snatch its prey before it even has a chance to realize what hit it.
The eagle kills quickly by exerting over 100 kilos of pressure, totally crushing its victim's bones.
If their snack is too heavy to carry back to their nest, they'll gobble some of it up before flying home. The harpy eagle can feed on its kill for several days without getting sick from the rotting carcass. It can go a whole week without having to hunt down new prey. I could take a few meal prep pointers from this queen.
Their speed and power allow them to catch basically anything they want. Their go-to meals include spider monkeys, howler monkeys, capuchins, iguanas, small deer, and sloths. A lot of sloths. Sorry, Sid.
The harpy eagle is a sloth's main predator. Poor guys, they really don't stand a chance. At least monkeys are fast and have other monkey friends that can gang up on them to try and prevent the eagle from snatching their buddy. But sloths are sedentary and solitary. A perfect jungle snack, if you're into scrawny, algae-laden, parasite-infested snacks. But who isn't, right?
Even though it's sad to think about cute little sloths being crushed to death and devoured, the harpy eagle's diet can have a positive impact on rainforest regeneration and bringing a balance to their ecosystem.
By dining on animals that mostly consume vegetation, harpies help limit the impact that herbivores have on the rainforest. Conservation kings and queens.
Although these eagles are ruthless in war, they're loyal in love. They mate for life, and couples have been spotted affectionately chirping at each other and rubbing their bills together.
They split bird duties too, including hunting and working on their 1.5-meter nest, where the female will lay 2 eggs. But life is tough from the beginning, and they'll only raise the stronger of the 2 chicks.
In fact, if 2 chicks end up hatching, mom and dad will usually leave the second one to starve. Not really advice you would find in a parenting book today.
The newborn chick that survives will get its full coloring at around 3 years of age. The chick will be raised and fed by mom and dad for the first 10 months, but even after it can fend for itself, it may choose to live near its home nest for a long time.
Because harpy chicks take so long to rear, mom will only lay eggs every 2 to 3 years.
Due to humans destroying rainforests through practices like mining and monoculture farming, which lead to massive deforestation, the harpy eagle is now a threatened species. Some think there are only 50,000 left in the world. The harpy eagle's continued existence is important. The bird is considered an umbrella species, meaning that conserving this species and its habitat automatically helps in saving so many other animals and plants. At the very least, we can do our part by advocating for this species and its habitat.
High up in Australia's tree canopy lives the grumpiest, grouchiest, and surliest little assassin in the world. With giant exaggerated features, these cantankerous cranks can disappear into their surroundings, ready to strike when the moment suits them.
That's my finger, yeah.
This is the grumpy cat of birds, the tawny frogmouth. Frogmouths are a family of nocturnal predatory birds related to nightjars. There are 13 individual species, and they're found throughout the Indo-Pacific region. And I got to meet one of the 2 Australian species, the tawny frogmouth.
I think I'm getting some side-eye from this tawny frogmouth. I'm definitely getting side-eye.
You right?
Yeah, like a patio like this.
So this friend here is a tawny frogmouth, and despite how much he might look like an owl, it's not even related. It's actually part of the nightjar family. You know, this is definitely a case of convergent evolution, so they end up looking similar, but stem from completely different lineages.
Despite looking like an owl that's gone through Mario Party's facelift, they couldn't be more different. Unlike owls, which have powerful talons for grasping and tearing at prey,
Tawny frogmouths have gone another route.
See, his head is about half the size of his body, and the reason for that is because they have gigantic mouths. His beak is actually fairly short, but it's really, really wide. So when he opens his beak, he's got a gigantic cavernous mouth in there. He uses that rather than using its claws. So the little claws on their feet are not meant for hunting. The way that they hunt is all with the face. This big wide beak with a hook on the end is what they use to scoop up and hold tight. Ooh.
And hold tight to their prey, using their large mouth rather than their talons. Unlike owls, which generally are smash and grab ambush predators, tawny frogmouths let their prey, primarily insects and small mammals, come to them.
They prefer delivery over takeout.
These birds are mimics. The inside of their mouths are bright yellow, but it's not just a sense of style, it's allure.
See that bright yellow in the beak? Well, that combined with these whisker-like feathers all around its face is supposed to emulate what looks like a flower. Now, what likes flowers? Insects.
But they're not simply aggressive mimics. They also use mimicry to blend in.
They have a lot of great control over the feathers on their body and on their head. So if they want to try and blend in, they can flatten themselves out and become extremely sleek. You can see he almost looks like a branch that's extending off of this main branch. So they'll try and blend in with the trees that they're sitting on to become even more camouflaged while waiting for prey to come to them. Even their coloring, you can see, it's called cryptic coloring or cryptic camouflage, and that's something that kind of mimics the environment that they live in, and it allows them to be even less perceptible to both predators and prey.
One of their most striking features are their giant eyes.
So another thing that does make them resemble owls is the fact that they're nocturnal. You can kind of see that by the morphology of their gigantic eyes, meant to let in as much light as possible in low light conditions. So they do see incredibly well and hunt very well at night. Ooh.
All of these features come together to give frogmouths incredibly expressive faces.
Tawny frogmouths are the most charming birds I think I've ever met. Just for how grumpy and excited and how, I don't know, how charismatic they are. They look grumpy, they aren't actually grumpy. It's wonderful. If Grumpy Cat was a bird, it would be a tawny frogmouth. Trust me.
Despite their apparent malcontent, tawny frogmouths have rather adorable relationships. First of all, they mate for life. Breeding season starts in the spring, and pairs will build their nests together. But tawny frogmouths aren't very good at building nests, and males in particular tend to just toss a bunch of sticks together and call it a day. If you listen closely in the spring, you might hear a male tawny frogmouth say, "That's one fine-looking nest. Why doesn't mine look like that?" Males and females share parental roles, and they take turns incubating the eggs. Food is also provided by both parents until the fledglings are ready to leave the nest at about 5 weeks of age. Tawny frogmouths have a vast range and thrive across mainland Australia and Tasmania. They prefer regions with lots of trees, but they have been seen in deserts as well. These birds are versatile. Because of their vast range and adaptability, tawny frogmouth populations are stable. While they do face threats from habitat destruction, bushfires, and insecticides, these grumpy little assassins are resilient.
a frightening hunter from the depths of the Amazon rainforest. If looks could kill, you'd be entering a world of pain. This is the flying menace of the jungle, the wide-eyed living insecticide. This is the Potoo.
Today, we're talking about a bird that permanently looks like someone walked in on them while they were doing their business in the restroom.
These are Potoos. They're a bird family found exclusively in the tropical regions of Central and South America. There are 7 different species of these wide-eyed weirdos, and they've adapted to habitats as diverse as the dry deserts of Colombia and the wetlands of the Brazilian Pantanal. These species range in size from 30 to 70 centimeters, or roughly about the size of a pigeon.
If they look a little familiar, that's because we did an episode a couple years ago on their cousins, the Frogmouths.
Danielle and the team traveled to Australia to meet the Aussie version of the Potoo.
I think I'm getting some side-eye from this tawny frogmouth. I'm definitely getting side-eye.
You right? Yeah, making patio like this.
So this friend here is a tawny frogmouth, and despite how much he might look like an owl, it's not even related. It's actually part of the nightjar family. You know, this is definitely a case of convergent evolution, so they end up looking similar, but stem from completely different lineages.
Their resemblance is not only due to their being related, but also because their behavior is quite similar. During the day, they sit on a branch, adjusting their head to look like they're a part of the tree, and they spend their nights looking for food.
These birds are night owls, but please don't call them that. They actually lack the unique owl feature of facial discs that usually helps owls localize sound. In fact, these birds are actually more closely related to hummingbirds than to hedwig.
Potoos have a few adaptations that make them unique among birds. Their eyes and bills are huge. They've been described as being little more than a flying mouth. That's a solid burn. Their bill opens from ear to ear, and the inside has bright coloration that is thought to attract insects. The upper mandible has a tooth-like protrusion that helps them grab prey. Despite having a pseudo-tooth and pointy bill, they don't rip their prey apart. They just swallow it whole.
The vast majority of their prey are nocturnal insects. Moths are their favorite food, but they'll eat anything that flies. The great Potoos are big enough to swallow small birds whole.
Finding their prey presents a lot of challenges. The rainforest at night is almost pitch black. Other predators use their sense of hearing and chemoreception to find their prey, but as far as we know, Potoos use only their sight. Their gigantic eyes are perfectly adapted to low-light situations. The eyeballs are enormous to provide a longer distance between the lens and the retina. This helps them get more light into the eye and focus on moving prey at night. And their large retina helps Potoos keep high visual acuity when hunting.
Despite being predators themselves, Potoos are harmless to larger animals like ocelots and birds of prey. Their defense strategy consists of hiding in plain sight and being spooky looking.
During the day, they stand on a branch and pretend to be an extension of it. While being perfectly still, they keep an eye on their surroundings through specialized slits on their eyelids. That's right, they can see with their eyes closed. They might not be able to see things in great detail, but they can see movement and changes in light intensity.
If they realize something is approaching them, they'll do one of the following things. They'll fly away, they'll double down and pretend to be a branch even harder, or they'll open their big ol' eyes and ruffle their feathers to make themselves appear bigger.
The last option is what has made them legendary. Their giant peepers are a classic example of startle coloration. The idea is that predators will get so weirded out by them that they'll just leave the bird alone. The common and northern Potoos have menacing, bright yellow eyes. Meanwhile, the great Potoo has large black eyes that gives them a sinister look.
To keep up with their spooky aesthetics, these birds have haunting calls that make their environments unnerving.
The 7 Potoo species look alike and are tricky to tell apart. The common and northern Potoo, for example, are identical, and they've only been recognized as separate species since 2016. The only way to tell them apart is by their call. Northern Potoos, which are common in Central America and the Caribbean, sound like this. And the common Potoos, which are mostly found in South America, sound like this. Great Potoos have a melancholic call that has earned them their nickname, Poor Me Ones. Aww, poor guys.
When they're not hunting or cosplaying as sticks, these birds are most likely taking care of a baby.
Their nesting strategy can be described as minimalist. They find a concave branch or stump and lay their egg there. No twigs, no padding necessary. After about a month, the baby hatches. Both parents take an active role in feeding it. After another month, the youngling is ready to go on its way.
And then they'll be set to spook the neighborhood for over a decade. Well done, little godfellas.
Don't let this bird's looks distract you. The secretary bird has some serious kick. The secretary bird is one of the most gorgeous and widespread birds in all of sub-Saharan Africa. They can be found strutting around in open grasslands and savannas across the continent. Despite their stork-like physique, their closest relatives are birds of prey, like eagles and hawks. And like birds of prey, they have a special ability. They can squirt their feces instead of dropping it. Wonderful. Secretary birds are basically eagles on stilts and can be up to 1.3 meters tall, which is almost as tall as I am, which for a human isn't very tall. Surprisingly, these tall birds are incredibly light, at just about 4 kilograms. Their hollow bones help them get very tall and statuesque without making them too heavy for flight. They can fly at heights of up to 3,000 meters, but they're not quite as graceful as their aquiline cousins. But when you look this fly on land, there's little reason to leave the ground. These killer queens have been turning heads for thousands of years. Even the ancient Egyptians admired them. Bas-reliefs depicting secretary birds were recently discovered at the Temple of Hatshepsut. The amazing thing is that there are no secretary birds in Egypt. The artists were so awestruck by their beauty that they carved the beautiful birds in stone for posterity. European naturalists were also struck by their elegance. They were originally named Sagittarius, which is Greek for archer, because of their refined and deliberate gait, as well as for their head feathers, which resemble the arrows sticking out of an archer's quiver. Nobody knows for sure how the name changed from Sagittarius to the less impressive secretary bird. The leading theory is that they reminded English naturalists of their secretaries, who used to use goosequill pens and put them in their hair when they were not writing. The other theory is that it comes from the Arabic word sakaret which means hunter bird, but please forgive my pronunciation. I can't pretend that I know how to do that correctly. And that might be a more accurate name. Everything about their biology is designed for hunting dangerous prey, particularly venomous snakes. They have legs for days,
but they're stomping machines that kick with deadly accuracy. When they find a snake, secretary birds go for the head and stomp with ferocious speed.
Their stomps can produce forces of 20 kilograms. That's 5 times greater than their body weight.
Their fashion-forward plumage serves as a distraction. When hunting, they shake their tail feathers and wings to get the snake's attention away from their legs to prevent them from biting them.
Some reports even suggest that they're at least partially immune to snake venom.
As a secondary safety measure, their contact time with the snake is just about 15 milliseconds. That's faster than the blink of an eye, and more importantly, faster than a snake's reaction time. Just call them Foot of the North Star.
Blink and you'll miss it.
Their beautiful eyes have luscious eyelashes. These are modified feathers that filter debris when they're stomping and kicking up dust.
Maybe it's an evolutionary trait developed over hundreds of thousands of years to protect their most important sensory organ. Or maybe it's Maybelline.
In any case, they have the prettiest peepers in the animal kingdom. With these extravagant looks, you would expect them to be avian Casanovas, but they're really more like Romeos and Juliets. During courtship, males perform an elaborate flight display. If a female likes them, they'll form a monogamous couple and will build a large nest on an acacia tree. The nests are about 2.5 meters wide, spacious enough for the 2 secretary birds and a couple of babies.
To feed their babies, secretary birds carry food in their mouths rather than with their talons.
Their legs are deadly stomping machines, and their talons are sharp enough to shred prey to pieces, but their feet are not strong enough to carry heavy prey. Unfortunately, even though they can lay up to 4 eggs, usually only 2 babies survive. They have to compete with each other for the food that their parents bring home. The youngest one usually starves to death. This fratricidal conflict is also known as Cainism.
Parental care doesn't end at the nest.
After 80 days, the babies fledge and leave the nest, but the parents stick around until the young learn how to hunt for themselves. Once they're fully grown and pretty, they'll disperse and start their own beautiful families. When you see a shoebill, you might think that they look like dinosaurs. And the awesome thing is, they actually are dinosaurs.
Shoebills, like all birds, are modern dinosaurs within the clade Aviale in Dinosauria. But more so than other birds, shoebills really look the part.
They get their name from their almost comically oversized shoe-like bill. The rest of their body is also really strange, looking like a hodgepodge of different creatures. They have very ostrich or cassowary-like legs, a stork-like body, and a squarish head that looks like it might belong on a dollar bird, but with the flair of a mandarin duck.
And their call? Well, the word jackhammer comes to mind.
Shoebills are the only member of their genus, and the only other members of their family are hammerkops. They are also super weird looking and are named as such because they're essentially hammerhead birds. While people often call shoebills shoebill storks, they're actually more closely related to herons, ibises, and pelicans, and their only confirmed ancestor is Golithia, a giant bird who measured over 2 meters tall. Shoebills are endemic to eastern Africa and live in swamps from Sudan to Zambia, though some vagrants have been spotted as far west as the Congo River.
Shoebills are quite large.
Adults can reach well over 1 meter in height, and the tallest one ever found measured 152 centimeters tall.
About up to here.
In order to carry their large bodies, they have huge wings, measuring from 230 to 260 centimeters wide. LeBron James, for comparison, has an arm span of 218 centimeters, quite a bit less than an adult shoebill. These massive wings are great for soaring, and because of their large size, they flap their wings much slower than most other species of bird, only flapping them about 150 times a minute. Despite their large stature, they only weigh between 4 and 7 kilos.
a testament to their light, hollow bone. They may look clunky, but their bills are deadly effective tools.
The edges of their bills are razor sharp, which is helpful, as they often will decapitate their prey when hunting. They'll also use their sharpened bill to mow down grass to expose prey. If you look closely, you'll notice their bill isn't entirely rounded, and their upper mandible forms a very sharp nail at the end. They use this to stab and impale their prey. Wicked. They also have very large feet, and their middle toe can be up to 18 centimeters long. This helps a lot when you live in the swamp and spend hours of the day completely still, perched on floating debris, waiting for prey. Shoebills are very solitary and spend their days looking for muddy swamps with mixed vegetation, and then they stand around and wait for prey to swim by.
Their prey of choice, lungfish and bashir.
They have been known to hunt in areas preyed upon by hippos, as hippos will scare the fish and force them to surface.
Easy pickings for a shoebill.
Though if a fish refuses to surface, shoebills will use their bill to dig them out of any burrows they might be hiding in. If you couldn't guess, these constantly pissed-looking birds are very territorial when it comes to nesting. They nest very far from other shoebills and will fight any competing shoebills and predators like crocodiles that get too close.
Shoebills are monogamous, which is adorable, but they're not great parents.
After their eggs hatch, they tend to only raise the strongest baby, leaving the others to perish. Highlander rules, you know? The babies start fighting each other very early on to be selected as the chosen one. Shoebills reach sexual maturity at age 3 and can live over 30 years in the wild. Between 50 and 80% of their population can be found in South Sudan, with around 5,000 of them living there.
They are listed as vulnerable, and their numbers are declining due to hunting, habitat destruction, and capture for the zoo trade.
Their amazing jackhammer sound is one of the few sounds that they produce. And they use it to communicate greetings and threats. But with shoebills, the greetings are usually pretty threatening.
While shoebills certainly stand out from the pack, not all birds are so easy to identify. So what animal should I check out next? Please let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe for new episodes of Animalogic every other week. Thanks for watching!
If someone calls you bird-brained, they're probably trying to say that you're a little slow. But considering all we've learned about how smart some birds really are, this may not be the read your bully thinks it is. Let's dive bomb straight into the brains of crows. Are they as smart as they say? Or do people just think they're deep because they're goth? Hey, I'm Tasha, and this is Animalogic, the show that unpacks the nature of nature. Today we're asking the question, are crows smarter than a 5th grader? You could go pretty much anywhere on Earth and you'd find crows. Their sleek black feathers make them stand out whenever they land, and their dashing wings cut a majestic figure when they're airborne. These icons sometimes represent death, the story behind naming a flock of crows a murder. But they're also associated with power, evolution, and trickery. Almost every mythology and culture in the world has some unique tale or origin story about crows. But why is that? Why do they fascinate us so much? Their main thing is their famous advanced thinking powers, but even that is selling them short. Did you know that crows are also incredible mimics? They've been trained to count up to 7, with the most verbose among them being able to say over 100 words and 50 full sentences. Without having heard it, what do you think